Okay, everybody. This is just a little tutorial for getting everyone started on GitHub, as we've had quite a few requests for it. We're just going to go through a few of the first steps that just get your GitHub project working and ready to go. So we won't go too deep into some of the things like forking and merge conflicts, but we're just going to look at getting everything ready. So at the beginning, the first thing you want to do is double check that you have GitHub Desktop and Git Bash installed. GitHub Desktop can be installed by any student. It doesn't require admin, so if your PC is missing it, you can just pop that on. Git Bash should be installed on all computers, and if it's not, just let us know. Come to myself, Paddy Costello, the games technician, and just let us know, and we'll try and make sure the machines get it installed. But for the most part, I think every single machine should have this already installed on it. Second part will be to actually sign up to GitHub. So you're going to need to come to github.com and hit sign up if you've not done so before. Now, if this is under exam conditions, you do need to sign up using your northampton.ac.uk email address. This is just to make sure that we're having a clean account, we know what's going on with it, and it's not just some random person who's logged in somewhere else. So it has to be your northampton.ac.uk email address for any sort of exam conditions. So we're going to sign in. I'm going to sign in under my northampton.ac.uk email address. For you guys, you'll obviously have to go through and give a few details over as you do. Now, once you've got yourself signed up, you'll find yourself on this page. But what we want to do now is we want to open up GitHub for Desktop. When you first open up GitHub for Desktop, you're probably going to see a screen a bit more like this. This is the sort of default screen that everybody is used to seeing. And the first thing you want to do is you're going to hit Create New Repository on your hard drive. So I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do it from up here on my file. So I'm going to hit New Repository. Now I give the repository a name. So obviously this would be your game title, or if you're in an exam condition, your lecturer will generally let you know what sort of name they want you to give the repository. For this one, we'll pretend UON_exam_name_student number. Just for the sake of it. We can give it a description. You can put anything here from your course code to your group name. Once again, if it's an exam, your lecturer may ask you to put a specific bit of information in there. We'll choose a position on our drive. For the time being, I'm just going to throw this into my GitHub demos. I'm going to give a new folder. Throw it in there. Test. Always initialize with a README. It will be the first thing anyone sees when they go onto your GitHub. And sometimes your lecturer may ask you to put certain things in your README, such as manual details or even exam details, depending on what's getting set up. So for your gitignore, there are loads of different versions that are already pre-set up. So if you're doing Unity, you can just type in Unity and there'll be a Unity gitignore. Or if you're just doing a Visual Studio project, there'll be a Visual Studio ignore, and we'll do that for now. The gitignore basically tells GitHub what type of files it can just not have to deal with. It won't have to look at them, and it will just ignore them the majority of the time because they're background files that your project can create on their own once you download them to another PC. As for license, if you're intending to have collaborators on this and have it as an open project, you probably want to pick one of these top three. These are all open licenses, so they allow anybody to work on your project by forking off a separate branch of your project and working on it. However, we're just going to click none for now, especially if you intend to keep this private. You might as well keep it as none. But like I said, if you intend to actually open it up to the public, it's always good to have a license, even if it's just an open source license. So we're going to hit Create Repository. Now it might hang for a little bit here. There we go, it's just created it for us. Now at first you're not going to see any differences here, but if we go to our actual repository here, we will see our little thing has been created here. Now if you don't see all of these files, you may need to go to view and click show hidden files, because the .git here is often a hidden file. However, wherever this .git is, anything below this point will be considered something it might copy. So you've got the readme file there, you can put any information you want into there. You've got your git ignore, and you've got your git attributes. Now we won't go too deep into git attributes, but git attributes are usually used to ignore certain files that are too large. It will still make a copy of the files, but it won't be constantly shifting those files up and down from the internet. If you're going to use this as part of a project, we generally speaking will go through this together just to sort of make sure we understand what's going on. So you should have these 4 files sitting here. Now this is also where we're going to create our project. So I'm going to create a Visual Studio project just for the sake of speed. So I'll create a new project. Just make a console project. I am going to throw this in this area. I know I'm in the right area because the .git is showing up, so I'm going to select that folder and give it a name, test project, and that should all be fine. So we'll hit next, create. So we can now close our project because we don't want to do anything extra to it at this particular point. And now if we go back to GitHub, we should see the first points of our project, and this is our first commit. So we're just literally going to call this first commit. You can call it whatever you want. You can also put a bit of details in here. Now whenever you commit to a project, you can think of it a little bit like a diary. It keeps a diary of all the different changes you've made to your project. And we're going to check everything, make sure it's all okay. Now if you've got a lot of files up here, it might be due to your git ignore and git attributes not being set up correctly. Like I said, at the moment we're not going to worry about that too much, but sometimes if you set up a Unity project you might have a few thousand files. Well, actually you should only have a few hundred if the git ignores and git attributes are all set up correctly. But for the time being we're happy with this. We're just going to hit commit to main like this, and then we're going to hit publish, and publish basically pushes it up to github.com. So we'll hit publish. We always want to click keep this code private if this is an exam GitHub project. However, it's up to you whether you keep your code private on a sort of different level if you just want your code to be available to other people. Generally speaking, it's a good idea to hit private if there's any reason you want to make sure nobody's messing with your code or messing with your project. So we've got everything set up here. We'll hit publish repository, and we'll see it pushing it up to the internet. So now we've pushed everything up to the internet, we can actually go back here, and if I reload this page, I should see this new project here, which is the project we've just set up. And if we go into it, we can see this is the beginning of our README project. So this is the file that we set up at the beginning. We've got our .git ignore, we've got our test project here, and all of our code is going to be recorded from this point on. If you want to invite people to your project, so for instance a tutor or another member of the class, you'll go here and then you will go to collaborators, and then you'll simply add people via their emails to keep it nice and simple. And as you add collaborators, they'll be able to see your project. Go back to code here. Now it's very important to understand that every file inside GitHub has a history up here. So if you are using this under exam conditions, be aware that every time you make a commit, it will actually give you a little history on here. Generally speaking, your examiner will ask you to make a first commit, or at least, well, no, a second commit, should I say, at the beginning of the test. Usually you'll put something like the time and date in and just put a commit in, and that will be seen on the history. And you'll have to put your final commit in whenever the exam actually finishes, or within that time frame. So for instance, if I go into our little test project here and open it up, I will open up the project, and just here, for instance, I might put a comment saying start exam 1509 10 10 23, and I will save that. Now when I go into GitHub, that will now appear as a change, and I can click start exam, and I can then commit that to main. And once I commit it, that's the exam starting. And then you do the same sort of thing at the end of your exam to show that your exam has finished. For those obviously who are just creating projects, you guys should just be committing based on whenever you're making changes. Now if this is a multi-person project, I would suggest that everyone works on different scenes or different levels, as this will avoid commit errors or or merge errors where 2 bits of code or 2 bits of the project conflict with each other because people are working on the same thing. You can also do things like forking branches, which creates like a copy of the project so you can work on it personally, although that does get complicated and we're not going to follow that here. So we've just committed that, and now we push to origin, which is basically pushing up to the internet. And you can also, if you need to get a version of the project, if the project online has changed, you can also fetch from origin, which is going back up to GitHub to pull down the version of the project to your PC. So that should be enough for you to get the most basic project working on GitHub. Obviously, if you have other problems, feel free to come and talk to us. As I said, my name's Paddy Costello. I'm the games technician if you've not met me before, but also have a chat to your lecturers, and we can go a bit more in depth if that's needed. Thanks very much all. I'll stop it there.